The fastest way to lose power is to reveal how you feel before you understand who you're dealing with. This sentence alone contradicts one of the most popular myths of modern culture: the idea that immediate emotional openness is strength. Society encourages you to express, share, vent, confess, and reveal as quickly as possible. Emotional honesty is praised as courage. Vulnerability is marketed as authenticity. And restraint is often mislabeled as repression or fear. But this narrative ignores a critical psychological reality. Emotions are not just feelings, they are information. And information, once released, cannot be taken back. The modern obsession with instant emotional openness did not come from psychology, it came from social convenience. Open people are easier to predict, easier to influence, easier to manage. When you reveal how you feel too quickly, you reduce uncertainty for others. And uncertainty is where personal power lives. You give people access to your inner state before they have earned the right to interpret it correctly. And not everyone who listens is doing so with care. There is a difference between honesty and exposure, and confusing the two is costly. Honesty is intentional. It is grounded. It comes from clarity. Exposure is impulsive. It happens under emotional pressure. It is driven by the need for relief, validation, or connection. When emotions are shared too early, they are rarely shared cleanly. They are tangled with fear, hope, expectation, and unresolved tension. And that makes them exploitable. The moment you expose an emotion prematurely, you shift the balance of power in the interaction. You move from observer to participant, from neutral to invested, from unclear to readable. And readability changes how people behave around you. Once someone knows what excites you, hurts you, scares you, or comforts you, they no longer interact with you blindly. They adjust, sometimes subconsciously, sometimes deliberately. Either way, leverage is created. This is where identity activation begins. You stop asking, "Is it good to be open?" and start asking, "Is this the right moment, the right person, and the right context?" Emotional intelligence is not about expression alone. It is about timing. And timing determines whether emotions build connection or surrender control. Before we go deeper into why emotional timing decides power, tap like and hit subscribe. Because what comes next exposes the mistake that costs people leverage, revealing how they feel, before they understand who they're dealing with. This leads to the first core truth. Truth 1. Emotions are information. Emotions communicate needs, boundaries, fears, desires, and priorities. When someone knows what you feel, they gain insight into how to influence you. This does not automatically mean they will manipulate you, but it always means they can. Information itself is neutral. What matters is who holds it and when. Revealing emotional information too early is like handing someone a map of your internal terrain before you know whether they are a guest or an intruder. People often confuse emotional expression with emotional mastery. In reality, mastery begins with containment. You do not suppress emotions. You hold them long enough to understand them. You observe what they are telling you before letting them speak for you. This pause is not dishonesty. It is discernment. The second truth sharpens this further. Truth 2. Information given too early becomes control. When emotional information is released before trust is established, it stops being shared and starts being used. Even well-meaning people unconsciously respond to emotional disclosures by adjusting power dynamics. Sympathy can become subtle authority. Concern can turn into influence. Reassurance can create dependence. And in less ethical hands, vulnerability becomes a handle. This is why emotional exposure too early often leads to regret, not because emotions are wrong, but because they were shared without context, without clarity, and without containment. The problem is not feeling deeply. The problem is revealing depth before you understand the terrain. People who move slowly emotionally are often misunderstood as cold or guarded. In reality, they are precise. They understand that emotions gain value through timing. They know that once something is revealed, it shapes future interactions permanently. So they wait. They observe. They let patterns emerge. They assess character. And only then do they decide what deserves to be shared. This does not make relationships shallow. It makes them stable. When you stop revealing emotions too quickly, you gain three things immediately: clarity, leverage, and self-respect. You stop outsourcing emotional regulation to others. You stop seeking relief through disclosure. You stop hoping vulnerability will substitute for understanding. Instead, you allow emotions to inform you first. This shift is subtle but powerful. You begin to realize that not every feeling needs an audience. Not every emotion needs expression. Some need reflection. Some need time. Some need boundaries. And some need silence. This is not emotional repression. It is emotional discipline. And discipline creates strength. The moment emotions are revealed, power dynamics change. This is not a theory. It is a psychological fact. When someone knows how you feel, they gain orientation. They know where you are invested, where you are sensitive, where you are reactive, and where you are likely to bend. This does not require malicious intent. Human beings naturally adjust behavior based on emotional information. But whether consciously or unconsciously, the result is the same. The person who knows less retains more control. Emotions accelerate intimacy, but they also accelerate imbalance. When one person moves emotionally faster than the other, psychological asymmetry is created. One side becomes open, invested, and transparent. The other remains observing, calibrated, and protected. That imbalance is the foundation of leverage, and leverage, once created, shapes every interaction that follows. This brings us to the first sign. Sign 1. Emotional speed creates psychological asymmetry. When you reveal emotions too quickly, you collapse distance before trust has been earned. You move from neutrality into exposure, while the other person remains insulated. This creates a one-sided openness that subtly places you at a disadvantage. You have revealed what matters to you. They have revealed nothing. You are now emotionally anchored. They are not. Psychological asymmetry does not always look hostile. Often, it looks polite, comfortable, even warm. But beneath that surface, the balance has shifted. The person who knows your emotional state can now pace the interaction. They can slow down when you want closeness, speed up when you want reassurance, withhold when you seek confirmation. And this control often operates invisibly. The danger is not that the other person will manipulate you. The danger is that they can. And the ability to influence without resistance is what every manipulative personality looks for. Which leads directly to the second sign. Sign 2. Early vulnerability attracts manipulators, not trust. Contrary to popular belief, manipulators are not drawn to confidence or strength. They are drawn to openness without boundaries. Early vulnerability signals emotional accessibility without discernment. It tells the wrong people that emotional access is easy, that regulation is outsourced, and that pressure will likely produce results. Manipulators test reactions. They escalate emotion. They introduce urgency. They apply guilt subtly. They lean on sympathy. When someone reveals emotions too early, These tactics begin working immediately, not because the person is weak, but because they have revealed what moves them before understanding who they are dealing with. Guilt becomes a lever when someone knows you fear being seen as selfish. Urgency becomes a weapon when someone knows you fear loss or abandonment. Sympathy becomes a tool when someone knows you crave understanding. None of this requires cruelty. It only requires information. This is why emotional restraint filters people. Those who respect boundaries remain patient. Those who seek leverage become frustrated. Emotional pacing does not repel healthy connection. It repels exploitation. The most dangerous manipulations are subtle. They sound reasonable. They feel caring. They disguise pressure as concern and control as support. And they only work when emotions are revealed, before character is verified. This is where guilt, urgency, and sympathy are weaponized. Guilt pressures you to act against your interest to preserve moral identity. Urgency forces decisions before clarity arrives. Sympathy binds you emotionally, so resistance feels cruel. These tactics fail against people who contain emotions long enough to observe patterns. But they work efficiently on those who reveal feelings too early, because emotional disclosure creates obligation, real or imagined. Once obligation forms, freedom shrinks. This is why emotionally disciplined individuals are often described as hard to reach. Not because they are cold, but because they are self-contained. They do not rush to disclose. They do not collapse under emotional pressure. They do not confuse intensity with trust. And because of this, manipulation has no entry point. Before moving forward, internalize this affirmation slowly and deliberately. I do not rush emotional disclosure. I allow time to reveal character. My feelings inform me before they inform others. I choose clarity before exposure. Emotional timing protects my power. Emotional control is often misunderstood because people confuse restraint with suppression. Suppression is fear-driven. It pushes emotions down, denies them, and hopes they disappear. Restraint is awareness-driven. It acknowledges emotions fully, but delays expression until clarity arrives. One creates internal pressure. The other creates an internal command. Emotional intelligence is not about feeling less. It is about knowing when to let feeling speak and when to let observation lead. Most people reveal emotions the moment they arise because the feeling itself demands relief. Anger wants release. Fear wants reassurance. Desire wants confirmation. Sadness wants validation. But immediate expression rarely produces understanding. It produces reaction. And reaction is the lowest form of control. The emotionally intelligent individual understands that emotions are signals, not instructions. They listen first, they interpret, they wait, and only then do they decide what deserves expression. This brings us to the next truth. Truth 3. Emotional timing is power. Timing determines whether emotions create connection or surrender leverage. The same feeling expressed at the wrong moment can weaken you, while expressed at the right moment, it can deepen trust. Emotional timing allows you to remain centered while others reveal themselves. It keeps you from locking yourself into positions before understanding the terrain. And most importantly, it prevents emotions from being used as tools against you. When you pace emotional disclosure, you control the rhythm of interaction. You do not rush intimacy. You do not collapse distance prematurely. You allow patterns to surface naturally. This creates symmetry. Both people reveal themselves over time, rather than one exposing their inner world while the other remains hidden. Symmetry protects dignity. Asymmetry creates leverage. This is why people with strong emotional timing appear composed rather than expressive. They are not disconnected. They are deliberate. Their feelings do not vanish. They simply remain internal until context makes expression meaningful rather than costly. The next truth deepens this further. Truth 4. Calm observation must come before expression. Before emotion speaks outwardly, it must be understood inwardly. Calm observation creates space between stimulus and response. In that space, clarity emerges. You begin to see not just what you feel, but why you feel it. You notice whether the emotion comes from insecurity, fear, projection, or genuine alignment. Without this pause, emotions often speak in distorted ways. Silence plays a crucial role here. Silence is not emptiness, it is protection. It slows interactions down. It prevents emotional contagion. It gives your nervous system time to regulate. And most importantly, it gives you time to watch how others behave when emotional momentum is removed. People reveal far more in silence than they do in conversation. Their impatience, entitlement, sincerity, or manipulation becomes visible when you do not immediately respond. This is why silence protects clarity. It keeps emotions from being rushed into meaning they do not yet deserve. It prevents you from anchoring yourself emotionally before understanding the full context. And it allows you to remain internally stable while gathering information externally. Most emotional mistakes are not caused by the emotion itself. They are caused by speed. Speed removes discernment. Speed amplifies distortion. Speed creates commitments before truth arrives. Slowing down emotionally does not weaken connection, it stabilizes it. This is where identity begins to shift. You move from being reactive to being strategic. Not strategic in a cold or manipulative sense, but strategic in self-command. You no longer feel pressured to explain yourself emotionally. You no longer equate immediacy with honesty. You stop fearing silence. You stop rushing disclosure to relieve internal discomfort. Instead, you let emotions inform your understanding before they inform others. This shift changes how people experience you. You become harder to read, but easier to respect. You become less emotionally accessible, but more emotionally trustworthy. Your presence feels grounded rather than volatile, and grounded people are taken seriously. Emotional intelligence is not about expression alone. It is about sequencing. Feeling first, understanding second, expressing last, if at all. This order protects your power without killing your humanity. When you slow emotional disclosure, the first thing that changes is not other people. It is you. The internal pressure to explain, justify, or emotionally unload begins to dissolve. You stop feeling rushed to be understood. You stop needing immediate reassurance. And as that urgency fades, your presence stabilizes. This internal stability subtly reshapes every interaction you enter. Conversations slow down. Emotional momentum softens. And suddenly, you are no longer being pulled into other people's emotional tempo. They begin adjusting to yours. This pacing creates psychological space. And space is where perception changes. When emotions are not immediately revealed, people have less access to your internal state. They cannot easily predict your reactions, your priorities, or your vulnerabilities. This does not create distance, it creates structure. Emotional structure signals maturity, self-respect, and control. People instinctively respond to structure by becoming more careful, more attentive, and more deliberate. This is where the first sign becomes visible. Sign 3. People take you more seriously. When you stop revealing emotions quickly, your words gain weight. You no longer speak to regulate feelings. You speak to communicate meaning. Because you are not emotionally spilling, your statements become cleaner, more intentional, and more grounded. People sense this shift immediately. They interrupt less. They listen more carefully. They respond more thoughtfully. Not because you demand respect, but because emotional containment signals credibility. People take you seriously when they sense that you are not easily moved, swayed, or pressured. Emotional pacing communicates that your reactions are chosen, not automatic. And chosen reactions feel authoritative. They imply discernment. They imply standards. They imply that access to your inner world must be earned, not assumed. This seriousness is not stiffness, it is gravity. And gravity changes social behavior. If this is changing how you think about emotions as information, not impulse. Tap like and hit subscribe. Your support matters, and it helps this message reach people who are ready to stop leaking leverage and start moving with emotional discipline. And this leads to the next sign. Sign 4. You become harder to read and easier to respect. When emotions are paced, you become less transparent and paradoxically more trustworthy. People cannot immediately map your emotional responses, so they stop trying to manage you. They stop pushing for reactions. They stop rushing intimacy. Instead, they observe. And observation slows manipulation. Hard-to-read individuals create psychological distance, and distance creates respect. This is not emotional unavailability. It is emotional sovereignty. You still feel deeply. You simply decide when expression is appropriate. That decision alone establishes hierarchy. When people cannot easily read you, they regulate themselves more carefully. They choose words intentionally. They hesitate before crossing boundaries. They consider consequences. Because unpredictability combined with calmness signals power. Not aggressive power. Contained power. This is why emotional pacing naturally filters relationships. Those who value depth respect boundaries. Those who seek leverage become uncomfortable, and discomfort reveals intent. Boundaries stabilize relationships because they prevent emotional chaos. When emotions are disclosed too quickly, relationships often burn fast and collapse just as quickly. Expectations form before understanding. Attachments develop before trust. Conflicts escalate before context exists. Slowing emotional disclosure interrupts this cycle. It allows connection to grow proportionally with understanding. Stable relationships are not built on emotional intensity. They are built on emotional reliability. And reliability emerges when emotions are paced rather than dumped. This is the dark psychology of emotional containment. Containment is not coldness. It is holding emotion rather than releasing it impulsively. It keeps emotional energy intact instead of scattering it. It prevents others from shaping your emotional state prematurely. And it allows you to remain centered even when others are expressive, urgent, or reactive. Emotionally contained individuals are difficult to manipulate because manipulation relies on emotional speed. Pressure, guilt, and urgency all require quick emotional access. When that access is denied, tactics fail. The manipulator feels exposed. The emotionally disciplined person remains unaffected. This containment also protects clarity. You see people as they are, not as your emotions temporarily color them. You notice patterns instead of moments. You respond to behavior rather than emotional triggers. And over time, this creates a reputation. Not for being distant, but for being stable. Stability attracts trust. Stability attracts respect. Stability attracts seriousness. This is the transformation. You do not become less human. You become less reactive. You do not lose emotion. You gain command over it. There is a final misunderstanding that keeps people trapped between two extremes: emotional chaos and emotional numbness. They are told that if they do not express everything immediately, they are repressing themselves. And if they do not repress, they must express. This false choice destroys emotional intelligence at its root. Mastery exists in neither extreme. Emotional restraint is not emotional death. Suppression kills feeling through force. Restraint preserves feeling through awareness. One creates internal pressure that eventually leaks or explodes. The other creates internal order that holds steady under pressure. When emotions are suppressed, they do not disappear. They go underground. They distort perception, leak into behavior, and surface at moments that feel irrational or out of character. But when emotions are restrained consciously, they remain intact and usable. You still feel deeply. You still register fear, anger, desire, attachment, disappointment. The difference is that these emotions do not rush your decisions. They do not dictate your timing. They do not hijack your behavior. They become signals, not commands. This is the moment where emotional maturity turns into emotional authority. The core truths now converge. Emotions are information, not obligations. Information revealed too early becomes leverage. Emotional speed creates psychological imbalance. Timing is power. Calm observation must come before expression. Slowing emotional disclosure stabilizes perception, repels manipulation, and increases respect. None of these truths require emotional detachment. They require discipline. And discipline is not the absence of feeling. It is the ability to hold feeling without surrendering control. This is how mastery begins. When you stop revealing emotions too quickly, you reclaim ownership of your internal world. You no longer outsource regulation to others. You no longer use expression as relief. You no longer rely on reaction to feel seen. Instead, you allow emotions to inform you privately before you decide what deserves expression publicly. This alone changes how you move through the world. You stop oversharing to reduce discomfort. You stop explaining to secure approval. You stop revealing vulnerability to accelerate closeness. And when you do choose to express emotion, it is no longer reactive. It is intentional. This is how you express emotions without surrendering power. You wait until patterns are visible. You wait until character is clear. You wait until your nervous system is settled. Then you speak, not to unload, but to communicate, not to seek reassurance, but to establish truth, not to collapse distance, but to deepen understanding. Power is not lost through emotional expression. Power is lost through uncontrolled emotional expression. When emotions are expressed from clarity rather than urgency, they strengthen connection instead of weakening position. They signal trust rather than need. They create alignment rather than obligation. People feel this difference immediately. They listen more closely. They respond more honestly. They respect the boundary you maintained before opening the door. This is why emotionally disciplined individuals are often trusted more deeply over time. Their emotions are not weapons, not bargaining chips, not tools for pressure. Their feelings are handled with care, and care communicates strength. This leads to a deeper transformation: how you walk through life. Walking with clarity, timing, and self-command means you are no longer emotionally rushed by situations or people. You do not feel compelled to respond immediately. You do not fear silence. You do not confuse intensity with intimacy. You understand that depth is built through consistency, not speed. Clarity allows you to see what you feel and why you feel it. Timing allows you to choose when expression creates strength instead of exposure. Self-command allows you to remain grounded, even when others are emotional, urgent, or reactive. Together, these qualities create psychological independence. You are no longer pulled by guilt. You are no longer rushed by urgency. You are no longer destabilized by emotional pressure. And this independence is felt by others long before it is explained. People stop feeling entitled to your inner world. They sense that access is intentional, and intentional access creates respect. Respect creates safety. Safety allows real connection to form, not emotional chaos disguised as honesty. This is emotional adulthood. You do not shut down. You do not harden. You do not disappear behind silence. You remain open, but on your terms. You feel fully, but you choose carefully. You connect deeply, but you move slowly. You express honestly, but you do not expose recklessly. And because of this, your presence changes. You become calmer in conflict. You become steadier under pressure. You become harder to manipulate. You become easier to trust. People may initially label you reserved, guarded, or difficult to read, but over time, they recognize something else: stability. And stability is rare. Stability is safe. Stability is respected. This is why emotionally disciplined people often become anchors in their environments. Others bring chaos. They bring clarity. Others escalate. They stabilize. Others speak to relieve. They speak to resolve. This is not emotional death. This is emotional mastery. If this protocol showed you how timing protects power, tap like and hit subscribe, and comment this below. I choose timing over impulse. Because when emotions are contained before they're expressed, clarity replaces urgency, and control replaces exposure. From here, emotions no longer control your timing. Urgency no longer dictates your choices. Silence becomes a tool rather than a burden. And when you are ready to go deeper into silence, perception, and strategic awareness, the next protocol will already be waiting. You will recognize it when the time is right.